Hello and welcome to this bonus day of the Impactful Leadership and Legacy Week. Susan Papula and we wanted to share some of our insights with you from all the speakers last week and also share some of our work and our experiences in the area. So we are delighted if you're watching us and feel free to share in the chat any insights or comments you've got either from last week or just from your work, from your experience. So over to you, Susan.
Thank you once more. Thank you once more for everyone for being here, for listening in. I hope you very much enjoyed the week so far and that you enjoy the extra insights that we provide today. So I'm Susan, and that's Susan Papula. My work is very much focused around working with purpose-driven leaders, leaders that want to create harmony, whether it's in the workplace or wider society, that want to have a real impact and ultimately legacy. And I work with them, be it on a one-to-one basis, but more often through master classes, masterminding, round tables and talks.
Thank you, Susan. And my name is Katrina Horn. And when Susan mentioned harmony, I thought, I'm your harmony coach to your personal barriers that hold you back from enjoying the career success that you really know that you can have once you overcome those barriers. And they can look like anything, like this is a little bit sweeping, but people-pleasing, procrastination, perfectionism, those P's that can really hold you back in your career. And as Susan very kindly said, that is sort of the foundation, who you really are, you as a leader, and that will unlock all the leadership skills that you can develop in your work, but also elsewhere, as we shall see today. So Susan and I agreed on a few areas that we feel are really key to leadership and legacy. Could you just walk us through that, please, Susan?
So I will start off, and actually, in some ways, what you've just explained in terms of those personal barriers is actually very foundational. Because if you haven't worked through those things with yourself or worked with someone like Katrin, dare I say, then those are things that will constantly hold you back and pull you back and lead you to question yourself. So arguably, those things are very foundational to anyone being successful and impactful in their leadership journey. Then one of the key area that comes next is vision and purpose. It's interesting how it came up with a number of our speakers this week in various forms. If you haven't listened to them, when you have the chance to listen back, you'll find that people like Phil Smith spoke about it, Christina Wyatt spoke about it, as did Nigel Wyatt, amongst others. The importance of having a vision and purpose. And the key is, a lot of the time, people don't always know in detail what they want, but it doesn't have to be detailed, but just having an idea of what you want, or if not what you want to achieve and your why, then it's a matter of, okay, what don't you want?
And that's a very good point. And then I like to look at vision as a little bit as a direction. So let's imagine you went on a journey. If you don't know where you're going, you could be having a lot of fun, but then you might never get to where it is you're going. So it's the same with vision. If you don't have vision, what you're open to is never arriving anywhere that feels good, and also opening yourself up to a lot of doubt because you have not got that direction. So that means you are in a reactive mode rather than a design mode or a strategic mode where you make your decisions to get to somewhere specific. So you can always think about that if you're reticent about having a vision because you feel that that commits you to something that is a little bit scary. I can only say, good for you if it's scary, because that means you're getting out of your comfort zone. And that means that you're on your way perhaps to achieving great things. If it's not scary, well, then I would revise it. But just know that a vision is a vision and it's meant to serve you. So if it's no longer serving you, if it's sort of holding you back more than it's helping you, you can just change it. Would you agree with that, Susan?
I would definitely say so. Hi, Nigel.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you. We were just talking about vision and purpose and why it's so important to have them as a foundation. And I mean, and so having a vision is a good starting point. The vision might change over time. You might think, actually, circumstances have changed. What's going on in my life has changed. What's going on in the wider world has changed, or what have you. Or even my very purpose has changed because I see the world differently from the way in which I used to see things, and therefore I'm changing things. But it's having that something clear that you're working towards over time, which you ideally review, constantly review, and keep up to date with.
Yeah,
So
agree with that.
so well spoken. Can I just move us on? Because we said also vital to leadership and legacy is really knowing what it's about. So what makes a leader? And if I can just hop in here and with a quote from somebody I admire a lot and whose work I find really useful when I do leadership trainings, is Brené Brown. She says, a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. Is that a definition that you would agree with, Susan?
It's a good definition there. I mean, because definitely, because I think I would step back and start with leadership about leading oneself. So as an individual, linking back to having a whole vision and purpose, who are you? What are you about? What are you as a person trying to achieve? And if you know that as a starting point, then the key is, how do I get there? What do I do to move forward? And even because sometimes people have a view of leadership being you work within an organization, you're in charge of an organization. But even as I look at leadership more broadly, you can be someone leading an informal structure, you lead at home, you lead in different environments and in all different ways. And it starts with you being able to self-lead, to lead yourself. But then you add to being able to lead yourself. So what is it that I'm trying to achieve within as an organization, or whether it's a wider purpose or what have you? And what do you need? Who do you need in order to be able to achieve the outcomes you're looking for? And then you start to lead people in that way because you work with other people. You recognize you can't do it by yourself. So you develop teams in whatever form.
And it just sort of stresses to me what you just said, Susan, that it really starts with the person, the way you describe it, doesn't it? It's really about who you are and not so much what you do, the way Phil Smith explained it to us, right? It's so much about who you are. And I think who you are will automatically guide your leadership style, won't it?
It will. Yes, most definitely.
So, Susan, would you have any tips on if anybody's listening thinking, oh, well, I don't really know whether I'm leadership material, or I don't really know if I've got it in me and all of that. Have you got any useful tips for that kind of person?
I'd almost go a step back to who you are. So the more you know who you are, And the more you know what you want, the more confident you feel within yourself from that perspective. The more you understand also yourself at a more personal level, how you go about things, how you navigate the world, the better you are able to engage, to be able to share your vision, to share what you're looking to achieve, and then find the right people who get you, understand who you are, what you're about, what you're trying to achieve, and are willing to work behind you and get behind you. So for me, fundamentally, if you're not feeling that confident, if you know what you're about, or if you don't know what you're about, people say if you don't know what you stand for, know what you stand against or what you don't like. And that will enable you to begin to build the confidence. I know have worked with people who probably would never have seen themselves as leading. They might have been someone that was possibly even just that person working in a support role in an office environment. And then something comes up, something that they really believe in. And that means that they have to stand up and get people behind them.
Right. And also, Nigel Watson's talk was about leadership that had sort of been imposed, right? It started with a situation that demanded a development, and it demanded that they step up, the Maasai people, to a new kind of leadership. So they might not have chosen it that way, but they certainly were able to step up and become the leaders. I mean, that was the inspiring thing to me.
Yeah, and I would venture to say they probably, I would already had the leadership skills within them, but might not have recognized it. And so what people like Nigel are able to do, what we all do in that space, like leadership support, is help people bring out those skills, the capabilities that they already have, that they just don't necessarily realize that they already have.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Brené Brown. It's about taking the responsibility to develop that potential, first of all, in yourself, certainly, but then also in others.
Most definitely, yes.
So we've talked about vision and purpose and what makes a leader. We've got all those qualities within us. We just need to bring them out or get help to bring them out. But then there's also the obstacles, the challenges to having a real impact, because none of us like doing things for nothing, if you see what I mean. We don't like to make an effort if we don't get to the desired results.
Yeah, and I think within the conversations, the speakers that we had during the week, I mean, a lot of your work is very much focused around helping people to overcome obstacles and challenges that they're faced with. And it also came out with a number of our speakers, such as when we started off with risk, when Neha spoke about the fact that as leaders, you're faced with risk and you have to work out how to overcome them. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that.
But we've all got challenges, right? And first of all, we can recognize them, and then we can get the help we feel we need. So I think Nigel just came with a message. Okay. So I was saying, yeah, identify first of all what it is you're struggling with. If you can't sort of pattern spot yourself, well, then just talk perhaps first of all with friends. And if they're not helpful, talk to professionals such as you or me or one of our speakers.
Yes. And I think the challenge of and I think there is definitely something to say for speaking to professionals or getting a mentor or a mentor, because I guess to begin to distinguish between the two, a coach is often a more formal arrangement where you have someone who is supporting you, enabling you to understand what the challenge is, helping you to get to the solutions for yourself. And there's a place for that. There's a professional space for that. But then there's also the mentor, who is typically someone who's coming from a perspective of their own experience. And what they're often doing is, based on their experience and knowledge and understanding of where you are, they're giving you giving insights into what they believe you should do and how you should go about things, and with both cases often holding you to account to what you've said. And so I thought there was value in distinguishing between the two, because as you were talking about people identifying what the challenges are, I found myself thinking about Frank, who was talking about first generation leaders. And he was talking about that, you could say, from a South African perspective, whereby a number of Black people specifically, post-apartheid, became leaders for the first time, as opposed to the situation with other people who may have been leading, or they've seen their fathers leading and parents and leading, brothers and sisters. And so they have a whole network of people around them who can tell them, this is what you do, this is how you do it. But first generation leaders, and as he was talking, we thought that might apply to females at time. It might have applied to people from ethnic minority backgrounds, as well as people from social economic backgrounds, where they're the first person going into a leadership position. And I mention all of that simply to say that in those circumstances, it's harder for them to be able to work out by themselves what they need. And they're less likely to have people in their inner network, the informal network, to give them the guidance. And that's where the formal support really comes to the fore.
Yeah, it becomes vital, doesn't it? And can
Yeah.
I just also come back to this idea when I said it's good to talk with friends, meaning it's good to talk with supportive friends, right? And it's also good, as you said, to distinguish. If I'm talking to my friend, she or he is supporting me, but have they done what I'm attempting to do? If yes, let me listen. If they haven't done what I'm attempting to do, well, maybe they're just not my best source of advice, right? They're just here to support me in what I want to do. And then let me go and seek out the advice that I want or the support that I want. And can I just say the difference between a coach and your best friend is that your best friend hopefully will always agree with you and be kind to you, supportive, and say you're doing great. And a coach will just pick out all the areas where you could be even greater, where you're even better, right? So a coach will sometimes contradict you, not to be nasty, but so that you can become more of who it is you really are.
Yes, and that is true. And I think with the friends, those inner circle of friends, as you said, you might have those friends that work in a similar space and so have an understanding of the type of environment you're in. Though if they don't know the specific organization, they might still be limited. Then you have those that will always agree with you. I remember working with a man once who said, gosh, it's great to have your support, because there was an investigation going on. He was the leader. He couldn't speak to anyone in his team, and the only person he could talk to was his wife, a lovely lady who just supported him and told him how great he was. And what he really needed was someone that could challenge him a bit, not in a horrible way, but challenge him enough for him to be able to think things through and actually be honest with himself and almost help him to answer the questions that he was asking himself. But then with friends, there are also the friends who you mentioned earlier, having a vision and having a vision that is bigger than yourself. And sometimes you might find yourself with a friend who is actually always challenging what you want to do and telling you about all the risk and telling you that, oh, I'm not sure you should do that, and telling you all the problems with it without telling you the solutions of how you can work your way through. So,
Yeah, and let's just remember that they do that being well intended, because they can't see themselves doing what you attempt to do, and it's scary, and they want to protect you, right?
yeah,
So it's again about sifting the information you get by looking at who is saying it, right? Because it's so tempting to listen to only the things we want to hear and then not be so open to the things we don't want to hear. And I think what we're both saying is be open to a little bit of a challenge,
yeah.
right? Because it's that challenge that is healthy. I mean, positive challenge.
Yeah, I mean,
That,
I don't know about, well, if I do know about you, but one of the things that I believe is key is what I refer to as inner guidance or gut instinct, because no matter what we call it, when we meet someone who we want to work with or who's giving us advice, there is I know that for me, I've got that very analytical side of my brain that will, should I say, do the analysis or analysis of, okay, the person's good with this, but not about that, like this. But there is also that inner guidance. What does your gut tell you about a person as well? And I think it's important to listen to that.
I think it is. I like to listen with my heart and then check up with my intellect, right?
Yeah.
So those are all very important parts of leadership and also impact. But I know that, Susan, you're doing a lot of work on inclusion and strategy. So I think you should walk us into that, perhaps via some of the work that you do.
So for me, my work really picks up. So just contextualize where I've come from. I've worked in with organizations for probably coming close to about more than 30 years now. Show you how old I am, much older than I dare I say I look. So I've worked with corporate organizations, public sector organizations, and third sector organizations of varying sizes, the larger organizations, the medium sized and the small. And I started off working in the HR side, so very much the people side of business, but always from a strategic perspective. So even though you could say I was in HR, with any organization, I would always start off by saying, what is the organization trying to achieve? So I'd always go, what's the organization strategy? And then how does the HR side of things, the people side of things fit into that? So that's always been my mindset. Also, because I run my own business, also because I worked in investor relations for a year. So investor relations, well, cities, why do you want to invest in a business? Why is it good to invest in the organization? So what's the story of an organization? So doing all of those different pieces, working one-to-one with leaders as well. And also so that strategic side, looking at it from a systems perspective, so the whole system, recognizing the importance of people, recognizing the importance of profit, recognizing the importance of process. So all of those things come to play. And then increasingly over recent years, the issue of inclusion has come to the fore. The recognition that organizations that are diverse, and diverse in different ways, because it's not just diverse in terms of the way people look, but diverse in the way people think. But all that, the fact that organizations represent the society, the world in which they that they operate in. You can talk of it from an ethical perspective, but there's also the value to business that comes to the fore in my work. I'm looking at it, yes, from an ethical perspective, but also from a business perspective. An organization that is diverse, that is not just diverse, but truly includes people and brings out the best from those people, is more effective. But also the brand represents the brand image of an organization has become increasingly important. So that comes to the fore as well. And so all of those things come to play with working with organizations in terms of what are you trying to achieve? Who are the people that you have? And how do we work to get the most out of the people you have to get the outcomes that you're looking for? And I could go on, and that is from one of the key things that I find myself doing a lot of is working with organizations to make sure that everyone in the organization knows that this is the purpose of the organization, this is what we're working towards, and this is my role within it. And so that's a fundamental bit that I play working on a one-to-one or at a group level within organizations. And then it boils down to how you want to be, how are you contending with the challenges, the complex challenges, whether we're talking about the challenges around cost of living, the challenges of whereby it's now a hybrid workplace, the challenges, the last book I wrote, Male Perspectives on the Value of Women at Work, is about gender, but how do you deal with those issues and everything else? And whatever else is coming your way, those complex, so people call them wicked issues, and working those through. That was quite a long thing, but
Yeah, but it's so insightful. And what strikes me is that this inclusion, as we talked about last week, is that it comes not just from how people look, but it's really going out there and finding people who are different from you, right? The more we're different, the richer we will be, the more interesting the conversation will be, the more things will come to the table. And I think the more resilient we grow as an organization.
yeah, and with that, it's also, and I guess it's like finding the balance, because when both Christina and Phil spoke last week, I remember Christina specifically spoke about diversity in the team, and there was the whole question, how do you ensure that you have that inclusion, but you still have a cohesive team with purpose? And the truth is, your team, the shape will change. You bring people in, you don't necessarily want to remain the same. You change to take account of new people in, and you become richer for them. But the key is you all have the same purpose, you all have the same values, vision, objectives, but you're bringing something different. So you could almost say, if you think of a country in the world today, most countries have become more diverse. It doesn't change what the country stands for, but it changes some of the flavors and some of the hows of which they go about doing things.
That was a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So moving on, we also wanted to talk about real life impact and legacy, because we've been talking a lot about leadership up till now, but then there's a whole impact and what we leave behind, our legacy.
Yeah.
And we did have speakers on that, and perhaps the most striking example was Phil Smith. I don't know what you think. Also, Rob Zed Wentz talked about that legacy. And I think once I don't know, I mean, depending on your age, you'll be more or less aware of what it is you leave behind. But I think at all ages, really, it's so good to be clear on what it is you would like to leave behind, right? Because once you get clear on that, or as you said earlier, once you know what you don't want, then that can bring some of what it is you do want to the fore. So what are your thoughts on that, Susan?
Yeah, so if I link back into speakers, I remember with Phil, he did a great job of talking about how it's important to find your why, to know what you really stand for, what you're about. So I'm almost like looping back in a way, but knowing that deeper purpose, because purpose is linked, I mean, legacy is linked to purpose. And so one of the tips that I remember him giving is journaling. So how do you work out what your why is? There's the journaling, there's the speaking to someone else, the expert person who can support you. So that's doing all of those things to help you get to your why. I like the fact that with Phil, he gave a real life story, his experiences of setting up two companies. And if you haven't listened, if you go back to the replay, you'll get to hear about the story of how he ended up setting two businesses and made very good money in the process of doing so. But what stood out for me is having sold the businesses on, or those businesses not being in existence anymore, or in whatever form it now is, one of the things that he highlighted is that the things from those businesses, they won't stand the test. I mean, they might be there, but they might not have his name to it. But on the other hand, what he's focused on much more now in terms of legacy is relationship.
Mm.
So that is important. And I will also, I know I'm just highlighting just a few things from the different speakers, and I will also link back to the work of Nigel and the work that they've done with the Maasai people, that they're doing with the Maasai people in Kenya, and how that is building a legacy for the people there, but also a legacy for himself to be able to say this is what he's achieved. So just
Yeah.
highlighting.
And
You,
also perhaps it'd be useful to go back to Divya's talk on the role of business schools, because it would seem that in Goa they're onto something, right? Because they're sending these young people out to create that why so that they can have the impact and leave the world a better place, really. I mean, that
yeah,
is what came through for me.
yes, and I think that's very much about when I talk about being a purpose-driven leader. So you have a core business. I mean, you have your core business, and whether it's that you're doing that business and it's purely about profit, but you can do that ethically, and it's, well, you could have a business which is profitable, but it treats people well, and it treats its, I mean, both its employees and supply chain and what have you. But what I liked about the work at the university, the business school in Goa, is you're coming and you're studying, you're learning about the, I guess, the core hardcore bit, you're learning the hardcore business skills, but you're also going out into community, the people, so you're getting an understanding and feel for the people that you touch and will interact with, and your business is ultimately serving. And so that will hopefully mean that with whatever decision you're making, you're doing it with people in mind.
And can I just come in here with the reflection back to Audrey Tang, because the people we are affecting is first of all ourselves, right? And what impact and what legacy are we leaving with us, right? And how are we taking care of ourselves? And Audrey had so many strategies for us to, well, for stress, for a lot of things, just to take better care of ourselves. And I think really if we don't take care, first of all, of ourselves, then we're not there really. We're not there to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
Because so many people tell me, well, Katrina, I want people to think this of me, right? But what will allow them to think that of you? It's about who you are, right? It's who you are on a daily basis, not only when you're doing a talk to the whole company, not only when you're so and so. It's how you are every day, right? And it starts with you. Sounds a little bit cliche, but I think it's so true.
Well, it is true. And one of the things that's, I mean, two things. One of the things that is often said is that person that believes they're indispensable or they have to do things or no one is going to do it, so they're not good at delegating to other people, or they feel they have to work the long hours to get things done. It's that thing of if you don't take care of yourself and you're not there, the reality is someone else will do it. Or if it's something that your project that you're leading, or an organization you're leading and no one can take over, then that will be the end of it. So there is that side to the importance of self-care. But one of the things that struck me when Audrey was talking was the fact that someone asked her about strategies for team. So if you're leading a team, how can you make sure that their health and well-being is looked after as well? And her response was lead by example. So it wasn't and it wasn't to say don't have the well-being facilities and all of those things, but rather it was you start with yourself, you look after yourself, you're not working those long hours and leading people to think that they have to be in the office forever and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's really also realizing what impact you have as a leader. Like you are leading and people are looking to you for guidance and they will model what you embody, right? So why not show them if there are those facilities at work? Well, let's have the leader be the first to use them. Model that self-care that we all need so that we can be, I like to talk about being our best version, like being the best of who we are. And we can only do that with support.
And I think when we talk about leaders who have an impact, that is key with well-being. It's key when we come to issues around inclusion. It's key with how you manage obstacles and challenges, how you support each other. So the modeling of a leader is probably one of the most critical roles in being effective and having an impact, because if you don't do it, if it's just about what you say and you're doing something different, you're setting a tone and the message
Yeah,
will follow.
I like that, setting the tone. And I would really invite everybody, whatever you're leading, be it your family or a multinational, to create that vision we started off with. And then also revisit that all the time. And you can ask yourself in the same way, the impact I wish to have, what is it? And then, as you would say, Susan, you can get strategic about it.
Yeah.
Then you can start creating it, because it's so difficult on a day-to-day basis to invent ourselves, I find. It's so much easier when we've got that vision in place with the values to support it and being aware of it all of the time. Then decisions get easier to make, don't they? Because we've got the grid for them. We know where it is we want to be going. So let me just make the decisions that I can that will take me in that direction.
Yeah, and I mean, and I would say team comes to the fore with that. I mean, you could be a leader working by yourself, a solo entrepreneur, for instance, or you could be that person leading at home, leading a small team, leading a large team. team comes to play, if you really want to have an impact, as I mentioned earlier, there's that bit about having everyone knowing their purpose. But there's something about everyone having a role in defining things. Part of it is, but also the feedback. Feedback is crucial. If you want to know the impact that you're having, people talk about the 360 degrees. So do that piece of work which is about self-reflection, knowing what you're doing well, I mean, from your perspective, but also speak to your employees. You have to have an environment whereby people can trust that they're able to say honestly what they think and feel without repercussion. And repercussion might just be your attitude rather than what you do. But the key is create an environment whereby people can, employees, staff can feedback and say, this is what I feel we're doing well, what I think we could do better, or how I believe we could do things, what role I'd like to play going forward with peers, and if there are people leading above you with suppliers. But just that all-rounded feedback is of value to know that, okay, this is it from my perspective, but what do other people think as well?
Exactly. And I think that the best way to get honest feedback is perhaps to engage somebody from outside and have the feedback be anonymous, not so that people can rant, but so that they feel really empowered. Because you say, create an environment where people can. Well, again, maybe you think you've done that, but maybe then you haven't, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sorry.
there's always help to be had everywhere. And if you get honest feedback, well, then you can review and revise, can't you? Then you can change what needs to be changed. And just know that there's always something we can change, right? We are never perfect. That's the one thing that is certain. So there's obviously always scope for improvement. And that doesn't mean that it was bad before. It just means that it can get even better. But what did you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I would agree with a lot of what you said, and I would say sometimes there is something about using someone external to get feedback. But sometimes actually, if you have created the space of trust, there might be times where you can do an internal survey or something whereby people can speak in their own voice. But whether you do it internally or you have external support, I think the most important thing is what you do with the feedback you get. So don't use the feedback to penalize people, whether you know who they are or not. But most critically, it's acting on feedback. So if the feedback is if it's feedback about so there's feedback about you. I mean, that is down to you how you're going to respond, as long as I said, you're not going to respond negatively towards people because you don't like what they say. That is where there is value in having potentially an external person who can work through things with you to help you to say, okay, is this true? Is this something I should take on board? Or is there a context for this that a person who has made comments doesn't understand? But where the feedback is around an organization, for instance, how you're doing things and what the team members, number of members of the team say they want, even if you're not going to act on the feedback either immediately or at all, the important thing is to let people know how you're going to use the information, what your information you're going to use, how you're going to use it, and when. Because otherwise it's a wasted process. And actually it means that there's a lack of trust.
Exactly.
A lack of
Exactly. And you
cohesion.
just said the operative word here, which is trust. And I think, well, I know that you can't just create trust because you said, let's have an environment, let's build an environment where there's trust. And that can only be done over time, really. You can't make people trust you. Like you you have to really care, I think. I mean, you can't pretend care and people will trust you. I think it's something as a leader that you really have to be interested in people. You really have to, when you ask them, how are you? You really have to listen to the answer and you really have to care.
Yeah.
Right? And that is something that you can start building today if you haven't already done so. But just know that the benefits of that won't be visible for a long, long time because trust gets built over time. And we think, oh, I trust people who help me in bad moments. But actually, all research points to the fact that trust is built by the little things, remembering people's children's names or little things like that. That is what creates trust. Would you agree with that, Susan?
I mean, definitely. I mean, basically, it's relationship. You build a relationship with people. I mean, and how much you're able to remember of the detail will depend on the size of an organization. There's a chief executive that I've done some work with him and his organization. A year back, there were about 80 employees. Now they're close to 200. And I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the challenge of it. Before, he knew everyone by name and he knew everyone's the name of all the family members. Now it's like he doesn't know everyone's name, talk less of family members. It's just about being able to recognize everyone. So, but there's still how you learn to work with people to gain that in-depth understanding. I mean, when I've worked with organizations over an extended period of time, even if it's just going in that once a week or what have you, one of the things that I do is what I call the good old-fashioned factory walk around. So I'd get in and walk around and speak to people. So even if they don't know me, or I don't know them everyone by name, and I don't know the details in terms of their family, they see me walking around talking to people, they see me being friendly, people know that I'm approachable and all. So it's easier at some stages in some points of leadership than others.
Of course it is. But as a leader, you're always modeling leadership to everybody around you.
Yeah,
So if you are at the head of a very large organization, well, lead the other leaders, right?
exactly.
Lead by example, as you said, embody that leadership.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to one, who you recruit, recruiting people that have that shared vision and purpose. It comes back, and that links to some of the things that Jason was talking
Exactly.
about when he spoke about recruiting inclusive teams. But it also links into thinking how you think and having a can-do attitude. I remember when Kemi spoke, she had a very strong focus on leadership thinking and having a can-do attitude and thinking of the possibilities and having people. I mean, so if you think about that, you have to have people around you that have a can-do positive attitude as well.
Yeah, and as you say, and as Jason told us, when you recruit is really the moment to think about that. Like, it's not just about the technical qualities or the skill sets that people have got. It's really about who they are.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess there's so many different elements that came to the fore with the people we were speaking to last week. Such a rich diversity of people with different some of them you could say were saying the things that other people might say to some extent, but in a different way. But there were some things that had a completely different focus from the norm, but all very important. All to aim towards helping make an impact in terms of the way leaders work.
Completely. And maybe we could move into how you can create that for yourself, because we've had a lot of tools presented to us, a lot of insights or new thoughts perhaps that we need to sort of familiarize ourselves with and get used to. But there's also, you mentioned mentorship, there's coaching, and there's so much help to be got so that you can become exactly the leader of your dreams, if I dare say. You can be the leader that you always wanted to have, perhaps, or that perhaps you've had the chance to have modeled to you.
Yeah, and I mean, and as you said, so there's the rich diversity from um the the support you get from home and from friends, which often has its limitations, but it's of value and it's important because those people often help form your backbone, so to speak. They're a key part of your support system. The coaches, the mentors, the online materials and resources that we find, if you're able to filter through to the right ones, and to the programs and the business schools that we mentioned as well. And then within that, I would say you have us, both who support people in different ways. And if you think of the rich array of speakers that we had during the week, all with different expertise, it goes to show that in addition to the knowledge and expertise that we have of our own, with the specialisms, I'm very much around that systems, the focus, I mean the systems, the strategy, the inclusion, those outcomes, those leadership those areas of leadership with the challenging conversations, those complex issues, helping people work through those complex issues. While Katrina is, I mean, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, very much helping people to overcome those foundational issues where you're questioning yourself, you're not sure of how to do certain things. And I don't know whether you'd want to expand on that, because you can.
Well, what I could really do is offer everybody listening the chance to come to a consultation where we can take a look at where you think you're being held back, what you are doing to overcome that, and then I could help you see what is working and what isn't working, and then put in place a strategy for you so that you will be sure to get that problem solved. And that strategy could include outside help or outside resources. But what you would get from spending an hour with me is that you would know what is not working, so you can stop doing it. And then you also see how it could be working. And I think once you get a glimpse of, oh, I could be doing this instead of doing that, and that way it would work, well, then you're motivated to do the work because you're no longer in the dark, right? You've got a clear plan. And as we've been saying with vision, as I've been comparing it to a journey, having that direction is fundamental, I think. And I really do believe that if you think you have got an obstacle, if you're battling with something in your personal life, if you feel that you've got a barrier to your success, then I would really suggest you do turn to somebody, Susan or me, or any of our speakers. If you come to either Susan or me, we can both direct you to whom we think would be your best resource. So with the email going out for this replay, I will put in.
Yeah, I was just going to differentiate a little bit. I mean, so in terms of if you were to come to me, and I would actually say come to both of us, because
Yeah.
you get something rich from both of us. And if we're not the right people to help you, we would recommend people to support you. But if you want to have that impact and you want to look at things at that strategy, profit, profit alongside people and process around that to be able to have that deep impact that leaves a legacy, then also speak to me as well.
Of course, that was what I was trying to say, that whatever you choose to do, as long as you take one little action step, one of those action steps could be to talk to Susan or me. If we can't help you, we certainly can point you towards somebody who can. And I think if you really want to take this further, then an easy action step would really be to the point. Susan talked about intuition or your gut feeling. So why don't you go with that? Why don't you have that guide you for your first step? And once you've taken that step, maybe you want to take a second one. So just know that the help is there. It is available. I will let Susan talk about her, if you schedule a time with Susan. I will put the links to scheduling time with me or with Susan in the email, which you can find with this replay. Over to you, Susan.
I think you've more or less said it all, really.
Oh.
Yes, so we'd love to hear from you. There's no pressure. Just have a conversation and see where we go from there. Thank you very much for being part of the week with us.
Yes, thank you very much for having followed along. We've loved all your comments. If there's still some questions lingering, please get in touch. If you can't remember what speaker said what and you want to get in touch with them, you can also write to me or Susan. You can always just reply to the emails. It will get to me and Susan, and one of us will respond. If you've got any ideas for how to take this further, if you want help, also get in touch. We both hope you have enjoyed this, that it has been insightful, and I would dare to say inspiring too, listening to all these speakers with their different experiences and viewpoints. And I think Susan said again that the diversity has been astounding, even for us, the organizers. We never thought we would get such a variety of voices, of perspectives, and of topics. So thank you, Susan, for collaborating. Thank you to you for listening. I hope that we will stay in touch.
Thank you.